Welcome, everyone. My name is Carol Rawson. It is my honor to serve as the chair of the Dystonia Advocacy Network. I also serve as vice president of the public policy for the Dystonia Medical Research Foundation. I'm pleased to welcome you here to today's program. Dystonia advocates work hard to have dystonia placed on the list of Department of Defense congressionally directed medical research program. The list is developed annually, so dystonia advocates have to work each and every year to ensure dystonia is on the list. Being on this list creates the opportunity for dystonia researchers to apply for funding for their important research. I want to take a moment to thank our hardworking dystonia advocates for their many efforts to create these opportunities. Dystonia advocates are dedicated and work tirelessly every year to achieve the goal of having dystonia on the list. Our advocates, like me, are all affected by dystonia. Either they personally are battling dystonia or they have a loved one who is. For me, it is both. I have dystonia, as does my daughter, and my father did as well. Identifying all areas of potential funding for dystonia research is important to all of us. To date, this program has provided $28 million in support of dystonia research. So this is a really important program for our community. I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to attend this webinar today and for your dedication and research in helping to find better treatments and ultimately a cure for dystonia. Today, we are pleased to have Dr. Cecilia Dupache, who serves as manager for the CDMRP. In this role, Dr. Dupache is responsible for executing the CDMRP's entire program lifecycle, including strategy, development of the funding opportunities, overseeing the review process, and analyzing the accomplishments of the program. Dr. Dupache joined the CDMRP in 2017 as science officer for the CDMRP infectious disease program, and prior to that was a scientific program specialist at the National Human Genome Research Institute. Dr. Dupache will provide an overview of the program and the application process for the program, and then be available for questions. The webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link to it once it is ready for viewing, so you'll have it as a resource. I want to thank Dr. Dupache for her work and for her efforts to help our investigators better understand the application process. We are delighted to have her with us today. We will have time at the end for your questions, so please put them in the Q&A box. It's my pleasure to turn the program over to Dr. Dupache. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm excited to share our funding opportunities with this community, with this group of researchers. So, and I hope that that this is beneficial to you, and you can feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions after the webinar. I'm waiting for the slides to come up. There we go. Okay, so as I was introduced, my name is Cecilia Dupache. I am the program manager for the peer-reviewed medical research program, which is one of the programs that falls under the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, which is our organization. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to start with an overview of the organization itself. We have other programs aside from PRMRP, so an overview of CDMRP. Our program cycle and the review process, which is applicable to all the programs in the organization. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about specifics of peer-reviewed medical research program, which is the program that I manage, and where the topic area of dystonia was assigned to. And we're going to go over our available funding opportunities and what you can do to apply. And I'm going to close off with some additional resources, tips, and strategies for success. Next slide, please. So we always like to start off this briefing with the vision and mission of our organization. So our vision is to transform healthcare through innovative and impactful research. And you're going to hear me speak to these words, innovative and impactful, throughout this presentation, because this is really what differentiates us. What we like to say that differentiates us from other funding organizations is that we are funding that impactful research that's going to have applicable benefits to the communities and to the patients that are living with the disease and condition. And we do that by responsibly managing collaborative research that discovers, develops, and delivers healthcare solutions for service members, veterans, and the American public. And I put this here just to draw your attention to the broad audience that we're trying to, this comes with us with congressional language. So we are following here congressional intent. So it really is, we're not just restricted to, even though we're under the DOD, we're not just restricted to active duty members. Next slide, please. This is our star graph, the who, the what, the where, and the how of our organization. So we started in 1992 with grassroots efforts of advocates that went to the Hill that wanted an appropriation for breast cancer research. That appropriation was assigned to the Army, and that's what stood up our organization, called now Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs. And we have steadily grown since then. Today, we have 35 programs that are assigned to us for execution. We fund innovative and impactful biomedical research, like I said, research that has translatability and applicability to the patients living with the disease and condition. And we can fund researchers and institutes all around the world. So this is not only limited to United States. We can fund academia, also in industry. And we do this by using our two-tier review process. This is how we select the proposal. So I'm going to talk in depth throughout the presentation about our two-tier review process in the next slides. Next slide, please. So the hallmarks of our organization, I think it's important to start stating that Congress adds these funds to the DOD budget, meaning that we do not request this fund. This is not part of the president's budget request. These funds are targeted research funds that are added to us by congressional special interest through Congress. We fund high impact and high innovative research that probably other funding organizations wouldn't venture to fund. We are proud to say that we avoid duplication with other funding agencies, and we do that by having a strong partnership either with the NIH or the VA, and we have access to the proposals that are submitted and being funded to them. So really, we are trying to fund here unmet gaps, and we are teasing apart any budgetary or even scientific duplication. Our funding opportunities, they're publicly announced and competed. We like saying that this is an equal opportunity program, meaning that we do not work with specific performers to tailor their proposal. So we are not here to provide competitive advantage. So everything that's announced can be publicly found. And we really count on the researchers to come up and draft the best ideas that are going to be competitive to be submitted to us. We followed the National Academy of Medicine, which was the recommended model for application review when the organization was stood up. We followed that until today. We have been reviewed several times, which involves the two-tier review process, which is just beginning with the peer review and then a second review, which is the programmatic review. And I will talk in depth about this. The consumers are our true north. They're the true north and the foundation of our programs. We exist because of individuals that go and strong advocacy efforts. And they participate through every process, through peer review and programmatic review. So they have an equal vote as scientist reviewers in our selection process. Because our funding is appropriated annually, we have the ability to adapt the program's vision and investment strategy annually, different than other funding organizations that have more formal commitments. Our funding, we have because of that, we have funding flexibility. So our funds, they are obligated up front. Our appropriations are annual, as I mentioned, so we obligate our funds up front, meaning that you will not run the risk of having your funds cut in out-year budgets. We do not have continuation funding. This is a question that we're asked several times. So if you had a previous award with us, do we have a mechanism that will continue supporting that product? The answer is no, we don't. We are here to meet congressional intent. So every year our topic areas might vary. The intent of the program might vary. So we can't continue funding based on previous performance. We do not have a pay line. Like I said, we have a second level of review. So not necessarily the proposals that have the highest scientific score through peer review are going to be the ones that are recommended for funding. We have a group of individuals that are making these funding recommendations based on scientific merit, but on other criteria that we will discuss later on. We are transparent and accountable to our stakeholders. We try to include every information possible on our website. You are able to find their previously funded awards. You're able to find our reports to Congress. We really try to be as transparent as we can. And lastly, we're proud to say that we have the lowest management costs compared to other funding organizations, which allows us to maximize the research dollars that we have for investment. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot of all the programs that were assigned to CDMRP this year. So these are our FY23 appropriations. You will see there we have smaller appropriations for programs that are have a more prescriptive congressional language, like alcohol and substance use disorders. And then we have programs that have just a list of topic areas that are assigned to them to be executed. And you can see there the one that's highlighted, which is the program that I'm talking about today, peer-reviewed medical. So this year we had 50 topic areas assigned to the program, and a total congressional appropriation of $370 million. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about our program cycle, the review process, and all the steps that are necessary that go behind the scenes when we are evaluating a proposal for funding. Next slide, please. So all our program cycle always starts with a vision setting meeting. That is when we get the input of several of our stakeholders, so we can devise a strategy to execute the funds that are going to be appropriated to us. After we release congressional appropriation, we cannot release our funding opportunities before that. That's when we will release our funding opportunities. Then we go through the steps of pre-application receipt, pre-application screening or invitation. We will discuss that in further slides. Then we go through the first level of review, which is peer review, and then programmatic review. On the right side of the graph here, you will see all the milestones, all the steps that happen after your award is recommended for funding, all the way to close. I'm not going to focus on this for this briefing. We're here focusing more on the application process. But on this slide, I still would like to draw your attention to two items here. The first one is the programmatic panel. You can see there in this brown circle right in the middle on the left, they have input on several steps of our program cycle. They're important stakeholders. They are formed of individuals, clinicians, sometimes service members. So it's a varied expertise that composes this programmatic panel. In our programmatic panel, each program under CDMRP has their own programmatic panel, and they're all updated on our website. And I encourage you to take a look at the programmatic panel for the peer-reviewed medical research program, because they are going to ultimately be the ones that are going to be putting their vote to recommend your proposal for funding or not. The other thing that I would like to note is you can see there the bottom blue arrow. By the time we receive the appropriation, which is when we can release the funding opportunities, until we are able to go through all these steps that I have shown here, it can take a significant amount of time. Okay, and if the year we are in a continuing resolution like we have been for the past, that timeline ends up being shortened by us until the time that we have to obligate these funds. So when you submit your proposal all the way to when you get your recommendation letter, it might take from 12 to 18 months sometimes. So I encourage you to keep that in mind while you're drafting your proposal, to make sure that you have the proper buffer for you to initiate your award. Next slide, please. So the goal of this two-tier review process is a partnership between the peer review and programmatic review. So we're trying to get the best scientific, the best proposals with the best high scientific merit, but also going through our programmatic panel, which is, can say a board, if you will, that are able to look at the proposals and make sure that we are offering the highest promise to fulfill the programmatic goals that are set forth in our funding opportunity. Next slide, please. So the first level of review is peer review. If you can, one more click, please. All right, is peer review. So I think researchers are familiar with peer review. We are evaluating a proposal based on a set of criteria, but based on their technical and scientific merit. But we're evaluating the proposals individually, maybe comparing it to an ideal application. This is a criteria-based evaluation of the entire application. Our panels are comprised of scientific and consumer reviewers. So again, I urge you to keep that in mind when you're drafting your proposal. Make sure that you understand the audience that you're targeting here. It's different a little bit than from the NIH. Different than other funding organizations, we do not have standing panels. We do not have the Center for Scientific Review, for instance, that we have that's present at the NIH. Because our appropriations vary annually, the topic areas might vary. We want to make sure that we are recruiting the appropriate expertise that's needed for the proposals that we receive. So we do not have standing panels. We have to stand up the panels as soon as we start receiving the letters of intent. And like I said, the identities of the applicants and the reviewers are unknown for that year. We do have listed on our website, as you see there, the participants, the reviewers for the previous year, but we won't list for FY23 until the end of the fiscal year. So, but I encourage you to also take a look at the individuals that are comprising our panels. And we do discourage, like I said, this is supposed to be an equal opportunity program. We do discourage any contact between the program staff or reviewers and the applicants. That's not permitted. If that comes to mind, your proposal can be withdrawn. The outcome of peer review is the summary statement, which is where you will be scored based on your technical merit, and we're going to have a narrative of the strengths and the weaknesses of your proposal based on the criteria that I'm gonna go through them, but that are listed in our funding opportunities. Next slide, please. So then after we have determined which of the proposals that we received have the highest scientific score and merit, those are the ones that are going to go to the second level of review, which is programmatic review. And here now it's a comparison-based evaluation, right? So we are looking here at the highest ones, but how well of those, how are they faring in comparison to each other, to adherence to the award mechanism, the innovation and impact, the relevance to program goals, and we also do consider our portfolio composition. So like I said, there is no pay line, not necessarily. Sometimes we do have researchers that have a highest technical score and scientific score through the summary statement, and they're not the ones, and then somebody has a lower score and they are the ones that are going to be recommended for funding. But again, this is our processes, and we are trying to check several boxes while we go through that. The programmatic reviewers are panel members. Again, we also do have consumers here on these panels. So, and also we have a variety of representative organizations, of federal organizations. You have active duty members sometimes. So, and depending on the expertise needed, we also include ad hoc reviewers. So the outcome of this meeting are the funding recommendations. Next slide, please. Like I said, consumers, they are the true north and foundation of CDMRP. We exist because of them. So our duty to them is something that we take into a lot of consideration when we're planning these our meetings, our program cycle. And consumers for this program can include patients, survivors, family members, and sometimes even caregivers that are living with the disease and the condition. They serve as full voting members on the peer review and programmatic panels. So there are going to be some attachments when you're drafting your proposal that are going to, like the lay abstract, make sure that that's going to go straight to the consumers. Make sure that the impact and innovation of your proposal and how that will change and change their the state of the disease and the condition that you're applying to for their betterment, right? Next slide, please. So now I've talked about the organization, CDMRP, how we are congressionally mandated. I've spoken a little bit about the program cycle. This is applicable to all programs on CDMRP. And I'm going to get into a little bit more specifics of the peer-reviewed medical research program. Next slide, please. So we initiated in 1999. That was the first time that that Congress gave an appropriation for the peer-reviewed medical research program. So a little bit later than when the organization started, and different than other programs that have a much more guided or prescriptive language for how they have to execute the funds. For PRMRP, Congress states, and in the congressional language, we receive that we have to support research of clear scientific merit and direct relevance to military health in specified topic areas. And then next slide, please. And then with that year's appropriation in the congressional language, we receive a list of topic areas that can be used with that year's appropriation. So you see there for FY23, we received 50 total topic areas. In blue, you have topic areas that have never been assigned to the program. We've had this program for over 20 years now, so we have a history. There are some topic areas that come and go. There are some topic areas that are very, that remain with the program for several years. So in blue there are new topic areas that have never been assigned to the program. And in green, we have topic areas that for some reason fell off of the program in FY22 are now making a return. What's important to note is that for you to be eligible for funding under this program, you need to address one of these topic areas. And also there is no dedicated line of funding between the topic areas. So it's going to be the program strategy on how we are going to allocate the funds, but also it's a comparison based between the scientific merit of these proposals that we receive. Next slide, please. So to execute these funds in these topic areas, you can see there's a broad range of diseases and conditions. The program, we have devised a strategy, which is to this portfolio-driven approach. So we have currently now 9 portfolios, and these topic areas, they're allocated to these portfolios that represent several areas of research. You can see there that dystonia is going to be allocated to the neuroscience portfolio. Actually to the rare diseases, this is a shuffle that we did last year, actually to the rare diseases and conditions portfolio this year. And this is actually important to note. So this year, this is new for the peer-reviewed medical research program. A lot of these rare diseases and conditions, they were located in our neuroscience portfolio because of all the neurological implication. And now this year, because this has grown significantly, we have decided to carve out and make a special rare diseases and conditions portfolio so we can have strategic goals that are actually addressing what's needed in these conditions, and also make the comparison a little bit more fair when we're looking at all these rare diseases. Next slide, please. So every year, like I said, when we receive the congressional language, we analyze which are going to be their best funding vehicles for to execute the funds and to meet the gaps of the community. This year, we have released 6 funding opportunities. You can see there, they go all the way from innovative concepts to clinical trials, going through translational research and team science. The applicants will have to address a topic area, as I mentioned, and also a portfolio-specific strategic goal. So we meet with our stakeholders every year. We meet, I reach out to all the advocacy groups to really get a sense of what the community needs. And each year we adapt the strategic goals in a way that can meet the needs of those conditions assigned to each portfolio. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk here in more detail about our funding opportunities that are available right now. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we have 6. So here I'm going to go through specifics of each one of them in this slide and the next slide. The Discovery Award is our smallest award, but the goal of this award is really to support that highly innovative research. So we're looking here for that game-changing idea, and what we aim to do is just provide some, if you will, some seed funding, and maybe a researcher that's not even in the area can apply for this and make significant leaps within the research. field. So for this award mechanism, no preliminary data is required. We're really looking here, the most important criteria is innovation and impact. Then we move on to our investigator-initiated award mechanism. This is what's most similar to the DRO1 of the NIH. We have two options here. You can come for, as a single investigator, or there's a partner EPI option, which increases the direct cost maximum a little bit. This, it can support from basic research all the way to translational research. Clinical trials are not allowed under this mechanism, so we have other mechanisms for clinical trial. And this is, as I mentioned, what's the most similar to the DRO1 of the NIH. Then we move on to our technology therapeutic award mechanism. Here we have two funding options. We have, and this is a product-driven award. So here what we really aim to do is to find that impactful product that will prepare it for clinical applications. So by the end of the, if you apply for the funding level 2, we expect that by the end of this award, by the end of your period of performance, you will be able to successfully obtain an IND. So we can support GMP production, we can support toxicology studies. It's all, but it's mostly a product-driven award mechanism. You can see at the bottom there of the slide, a letter of intent is required for these mechanisms. And I'm going to make a distinction between a letter of intent and a pre-proposal. Okay. So a letter of intent, as I mentioned, we do not have standing panels. So this is just an administrative step that we have to require. So we can start, once we receive a letter of intent, we will be able to start standing up our panels. A letter of intent is just what the name implies. It's a letter of intent. It's a one-page document. You will not be invited or not invited. We're not evaluating if we want you to submit or not. It's just an administrative step, as I mentioned, for us to start standing up the panels. However, it is not optional. This is a requirement. So by the time when we receive, when you have the deadline for the full proposal, if we have not received the letter of intent, we cannot accept your full proposal. So keep that in mind when you're reading through our funding opportunities. I know that there are several, but keep in mind the deadlines and make sure that you submit at least the letter of intent, which is very simple. It's the title of your proposal, a paragraph, and the topic area that you're applying to. So for these three mechanisms, a letter of intent is what's needed. Next slide, please. Here we have our larger award mechanisms. And then for the two on the left there, it's not a letter of intent. We're going to require now a pre-proposal, and we're going to evaluate that pre-proposal, and you either receive an invitation or not, or a non-invite letter. And then for the lifestyle and behavioral health interventions, a letter of intent is only required. So starting here with our larger award mechanisms, the Focus Program Award, this is a team science award. We're here to support 4 or 5 groups that are coming together to address an overarching challenge. The maximum direct cost for that is 7.2 million. And here again, we can fund all types of research from basic to translational, and clinical trials are also allowed, included in the Focus program. Then we have our full clinical trial mechanism. This is a very popular mechanism for us. If you come in, we have 2 options. We have a planning phase clinical trial where we are proposing to upfront obligate 500K for this, and you would during this planning phase, you would finalize IRB submissions, you would finalize IRB approvals and all the regulatory requirements. And then we would fund the trial phase as an option, assuming that you meet all the milestones that we set forth during negotiation, right? Both budgets, if you go with this option, the budget for the planning phase and also for the clinical trial phase are going to be evaluated and reviewed at this time, all at once. Our full clinical trial, if you're ready, if you have already the IND, and for the clinical use that you're investigating, this is a great option. Our clinical trials do not have a direct cost limit because we really want to make an impact. So we are welcome to receive any budget that you think that is going to be necessary to execute that trial. making sure that that's also a part of the peer review and programmatic review. So for both of these are very elaborate mechanisms for us, for you to submit. This is why we try to lessen the burden and request a pre-proposal. So the pre-proposal is going to be a 4-page document. If you go through our funding opportunities, it's going to list exactly what it is that's needed, but it's just basically a summary of what you plan on submitting. And then our programmatic panel will take a look at it, and they will either say yes or no, an invite or not invite at this point, because we don't want to give you the burden of drafting that entire proposal when really there is no chance that it will be funded that year, or no interest for our portfolio based on all the things that we mentioned previously, portfolio composition and other criteria. Lastly, we have the lifestyle and behavioral health interventions. This is a new award mechanism that we put out this year. I'm testing to see how it's received by the community. The goal here, the direct cost for it is $3 million. And the goal is really to keep under one umbrella all those types of research, clinical research and clinical trial that are non-FDA regulated. So we receive a lot of those, and they end up competing with the clinical trials, and where they have a more of a conventional biological intervention. And here it's we are trying to put under the same umbrella all of these types of research that include behavioral health, psychology, psychometrics, biostatistics, epidemiology, and surveillance. For this award mechanism, we're just doing a letter of intent this year. Next slide, please. So we went through the 6 funding opportunities that we have, what's the intent of each one of them. But for all of our funding opportunities, a military health statement is going to be necessary, right? So really, you're going to have to clearly articulate how the research is relevant to the healthcare needs of the service members, veterans, military beneficiaries, and our American public. Keeping in mind that it is a broad audience, but we are under the DOD, and articulating the military relevance is something that is really important, because this is going to be reviewed by the programmatic panel. They are the ones that are going to be reviewing and evaluating. We include here some examples of what are the military relevance. So it can include like dual use capacity that will benefit the civilian population and also military health, aspects of the targeted disease and condition with direct relevance to military health, and also sometimes how it contributes to the readiness of service members, right? So mission readiness, as we call it. Sometimes they have a family member with a disease or a condition. It hinders what we call our mission readiness. And again, so it's the military health statement, and then the proposals are going to have to address one of the FY23 topic areas and one of the FY23 portfolio specific strategic goals. And here I'm going to give you an example of what that looks like. Next slide, please. So here's the rare diseases and conditions portfolio. What I just removed this from the funding opportunities. This is all there. These on your right, you will see the topic areas that were allocated to this bucket, if you will, and that are going to be comparatively reviewed. And for this portfolio, we do have strategic goals that are going to be different than other portfolios, right? And they will all align under the continuum of care here. So under foundational studies, diagnosis, treatment, and epidemiology, these goals are broad. It's what we receive back from the community that the area needs, and it's the merging point between all these topic areas. They are broad. They are meant to be broad for a reason. Where we want investigators to kind of do a mix and match here. So if you choose dystonia, which one of the strategic goals are you addressing? If it's another topic area under this portfolio, what other goals can you address? So they are broad. Sometimes they have a little bit more of a prescriptive language, because we are trying to really close a gap in the specific community, but they are broad. You will see that you are going to be able to choose whatever stage of research you are, either one of these goals. Next slide, please. So now I just want to emphasize a little bit about the peer review, how that's going to be performed. Next click, please. So as I mentioned, the peer review, we don't have our standing panels. We're going to stand up our panels. And then under each funding opportunity, you're going to have a list of peer review criteria, which is really what your proposal is going to be evaluated against. And those are all there. They're going to be listed in decreasing order of importance, keeping in mind that the criteria for a discovery award is not going to be the same as the criteria for a clinical trial, right? So each funding opportunity is going to have a different set. So keep that in mind when you're drafting your proposal. Here we have an example. This is taken from the investigator-initiated award mechanism. You will see there the first one is going to be research strategy and feasibility. This is not the same for discovery award. It's going to be impact or it's going to be innovation. And then under each one of these peer review criteria, you're going to have a list of bullets that is what we are trying to evaluate. So to what extent the proposed research addresses one of the strategic goals, how the proposed research project, if successful, will make an important scientific advances in the field. So all of these, they are going to be there for each one of these scored criteria. We often like to tell investigators, if you are scrambling on how to start drafting a proposal for the DOD, start here. Take a look at the peer review criteria. This is what the reviewers, the peer reviewers are going to be giving you, evaluating and scoring you. So it's going to be a one-by-one line. Make sure that you address each and every one of these sub-bullets, okay? And we also encourage investigators to, after they're done with their proposals, hand out these criteria to a colleague and make sure that your proposal is meeting and addressing all of them properly. Next slide, please. Then we have the programmatic review criteria. One more click, please. And here you will see that the programmatic review criteria, they're a little bit more broad. This is a group, like I said, it's going to be evaluated by the programmatic panel. So they're not going to have specific expertise on that field, right? So this is a much more broader gathering of experiences and expertise for what that will inform how this program can make a better impact. Their criteria are listed there. They usually stay around the same. We're looking here at how it's adhering to the award mechanism, the topic areas, the strategic goals, the relevance to military health, and program portfolio composition. Our programmatic panel is listed on our website. Like I said, I encourage you to take a look at that, to make sure that, to take a look at our list, to make sure that you familiarize yourself with the individuals that will be making these recommendations. And another thing that I would like to point out here is that when you go through our funding opportunities, you're going to see there's one attachment, two attachments, three attachments. Each of the attachments that come, not all of these attachments are going to end up with the programmatic panel. So make sure for the attachments that you are conveying the information that's necessary for them to make a funding recommendation. These are individuals that are heavily relying on the summary statement. So the summary statement summarizes your proposal, and then comparatively, they're going to look at other summary statements and see how it fits into this criteria. So some of the documents from your proposal are going to go straight to the programmatic panel, and I encourage you to broadly and convey it in a way that's free of jargon, the impact of your proposal for the portfolio as a whole. Next slide, please. So here's just a summary of our deadlines. The one that's fast approaching, you will see there is the letter of intent for the Discovery Award. This is March 29th. And again, as I mentioned, this is not optional. It is a requirement. You will not be able to submit a full application on April 26th if we do not have this letter of intent. Okay. The only two mechanisms that require a pre-proposal submission is going to be the Focus Program Award and the clinical trial, and these will result in an invitation to submit a full proposal, which you will receive if positive by June 17th. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to close this presentation with some additional tips, resources, and strategies for success. If I can leave you with just one message here today, right, from this webinar, is to read the announcement carefully. The DOD funding opportunities, our program announcements, they are long and lengthy. We recognize that, but they're long and lengthy for a reason. We do not work with investigators to tailor their proposals. So all the information that you need is embedded in those many pages that you will see there. our funding opportunities, they go through several levels of review. So all the information really that you need to make a successful submission and to succeed during peer review and programmatic review is listed in our funding opportunities. Next slide, please. Also look for, like, as I mentioned throughout this presentation, make sure that the relevance of your research comes across in the right documents. Also, it's important for peer review, but for programmatic review, where they're doing a comparison between the proposals, it's much more important that you are able to convey relevance, impact, and innovation. Like I said, impact and innovation are key for CDMRP. So really clearly articulate the translatability. How will this work make a difference? The innovation, what are the risks involved? What are the potential benefits as well? And feasibility is something that researchers really know how to bring it home, right? So include the appropriate expertise, make sure that you're speaking to the personnel, state that the study, especially if it's a clinical trial, that it's appropriately powered, demonstrate that you have access to critical resources. Next slide, please. And then I think this is very important, the planning and timelines. I think that the research community is used to grace periods from funding organizations. So absent a hurricane, a great disaster of nature, something really extraordinary in the meaning of the word, we do not give a grace period, okay? So the deadlines that you see there are truly the deadlines that you see there. Make sure that you give yourself the appropriate buffer. Many of academia, it's mostly the business office that is going to be doing the submission. Make sure that they have the appropriate time to work through the system, especially if it's a first time submitting to the DOD. There are always some technical glitches. Give yourself a few days so the help desk can address that. If there are every year we receive some great proposals that they come in a minute after the deadline. We cannot, there is no way through our acquisition and legal team that we can accept them. So keep the timelines in mind. And lastly, grantsmanship, right? I think that making sure that you understand that we have a second level of review, that it's not going to be only experts in the field that are going to be analyzing your proposal. Keeping in mind that we have consumers on both levels of review. So articulate the impact, communicate effectively. And as we like to say, make sure that the documents that are going to be reviewed by programmatic review and by the consumers are clear and unburdened by jargons. Next slide, please. We have a lot of good information available on our website. If you are thinking of submitting a proposal to us, I highly encourage you to take a look at that. We have annual reports to Congress. We have webinars. We have webinar series that are different, that are applicable to other programs in the organization. We have the research highlights. So everything that's funded, each month, PRMRP puts out some research highlights, some consumer highlights. So what is the experience of the consumers that are participating in this process? Next slide, please. You can also sign up for a listserv on our website. You will see this mail icon. You can sign up and you can choose to receive notifications for every program in the organization, or you can choose specific programs if you don't want to be receive too many emails. But if you sign up for a listserv, you will be notified when our funding opportunities are available and many other important notifications. Next slide, please. Like I said, we do have a list, a series of webinars on our website. These are not specific to the funding opportunities that are out now for PRMRP, but they are broad, and I'm sure that you will obtain several good insights from watching these webinars. You can see that there's a team science funding opportunity, so that's particularly useful for if someone is thinking about submitting to our Focus Program Award. We also have other development and technology and resources. So I do encourage you to take a look at these webinars. Next slide, please. And I will pause here with questions and take questions. I hope that this webinar was useful to you, and I am happy to discuss any further questions.
Thank you, Dr. Dupache, for your highly insightful and extensive presentation. And now for the questions. First question is this program open to researchers who are not U.S. citizens?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Next question is, how are funds distributed among these portfolios? Is there some place to see that?
No, we do not. Our congressional language does not provide us allocation of funds to each of these portfolios. It is truly based on scientific merit. So not all portfolios are going to have the same amount of funding. That's not how it works. If we are evaluating the topic areas within the portfolio, it helps us bring the appropriate expertise to evaluate that. But then it is our funding recommendations are based as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Next question. For the investigator-initiated funding opportunity, is it possible to submit as a junior faculty, such as an instructor, or if you're in the process of becoming an assistant professor, meaning you've passed one committee, but not all of them?
Well, the requirements are by the time of award, you will need to be, it's assistant professor and equivalent. So for the Discovery Award, no, there's more of an option there. But for the IRA, you have to be an assistant professor or equivalent. Now, you can submit, let's assume that by the time that, because we still have a year until we reach negotiations, you will be a full professor then. That's fine. You will be eligible to receive it. But I do think that during peer review, your scores are going to reflect the fact that you are not an assistant professor yet.
Okay, thank you. Next question is thanking you for your presentation. And do you recommend us to go ahead and submit a letter of intent for one of the opportunities, or is it better to contact the program officer first?
So as I mentioned, we do not have a program officer like we have the program officers that manage the portfolio, but we do not have a program officer like the NIH that will flag your proposal and say, no, this is interesting. We are really interested in this. This is an equal opportunity program. We want people to come in and they submit. And like I said, interactions with the program office is highly discouraged. We are looking here for the best ideas that come in, and they all will have an equal opportunity. There's no competitive advantage provided. So yes, feel free to submit the letter of intent.
Okay. Next, is there a list of funded grants or topics from previous years somewhere?
Yes, it is on our website. We have both. It's called a PI info paper. You can find that under the, if you click on the program page, you will find it. It's there. It's listed.
Okay. Next, where can we, oh, okay, so that was the same question. And next is, she didn't catch the end of the technology therapeutic outcomes. You said something about by the end of the award, you will successfully have
submitted an IND and obtain an IND.
Okay.
That's basically the gist, or an
Okay.
ID.
Okay. Does the research track positions count, example, associate research scientist for the application?
Can you elaborate this question for what?
It was an anonymous question, and that was it. It says, does the research track positions count, example, associate research scientist for the application? Okay, then I guess we'll have to move on that one, unless the person who's listening could send me more information for a better question. Are there limits to the number of applications one can submit?
One researcher can submit one proposal per award mechanism. So you can submit one discovery award, one IRA, one TTDA, one clinical trial, but you cannot submit two discovery awards.
Okay, so I guess going back to the question, does the research track position count? It says instead of assistant professor, can it be associate research scientist?
Again, it's going to depend on how peer reviewer is going to see that. If it's equivalent and you can prove that it's equivalent to assistant professor, then yes. But that is the requirement for that award mechanism. It's assistant professor or equivalent.
Okay, I think that wraps up questions. If anybody else has one, if you could type quickly, I will ask Dr. Dupache. Otherwise, we're going to thank her and close. Not just to thank you. So thank you so much for your time. That was wonderful. And hopefully it will help all the people who are listening.
You are very welcome. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Goodbye.